To me, self-compassion is this tool that I learned during the pandemic time when I felt so isolated, that as you go into this journey of trying to discover what's truly authentic to you, that you do it with this idea of compassion, because you'll run into things that you go like, oh my God, how could I have felt so stupid, or how could I have done that?
Yeah.
When everyone was telling me to take this path and I took it and I knew it wasn't the right thing to do and I still did it. I mean, to me, sit back, put your hand over your heart, give yourself some compassion, learn from your experiences, and now take the direction that you feel is authentic for you.
Welcome to the Coachability Code podcast. This is your host, Jordan Ring. Coaches, you ready to be coached? Let's go. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the show. Super excited to have someone here with me today. His name is Joe. He's a physician coach. I'm going to have him introduce himself and what he does. But first of all, Joe, just thank you so much for being here. Really looking forward to having this conversation with you today.
Jordan, thanks so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Sure thing. So if you could introduce yourself briefly, that'd be great. Is Joe okay, or should we call you Dr. Joe or Dr. Sherman, or help us out with that as well?
Yeah, I think Joe's fine for
Okay.
now. And yeah, people can call me whatever they feel comfortable calling me. So I am a pediatrician turned physician coach.
Okay.
So I would say a long career as a pediatrician in various settings and in various countries, and then reached a time in my life as I was getting older and for various reasons of personal discoveries and foibles and failures, stumbled upon this idea of accompaniment. And accompaniment for me in the beginning meant accompanying physicians and other health professionals in a group setting, and then later training and a business in accompanying physicians and health professionals individually and in group.
Okay. Fantastic. So I'm going to jump right in with like a Titanic level icebreaker question. What's a belief that you held early in it could be your coaching career, or it could just be your career in general, if you want to talk about that, but that maybe that you've come back from, or that you've learned more about and changed? Not that it has to be a completely 60, but just wondering if there was something early on that you were convinced of, and now you have a different viewpoint on it.
Well, as far as my coaching career and my coaching business, I would say, because I do have my own individual coaching business right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think as I started to enter into it and let go of my clinical pediatric practice and career, the idea of a switch in identity was something that I had not anticipated as much. And this is something that I work with many of my clients on. As physicians, we adopt an identity that is the wise person that has the answers and is supposed to have all of the answers when people come to you and
Yep.
they listen and all of that. And
Supposed to
as
know it
a
all. Yeah.
coach, exactly. And as a coach, it's almost the exact opposite. It's accompanying people, listening, and really believing that they have the wisdom and the knowledge and the resources to come to the conclusion on their own about what's best for them. So that's been the biggest lesson that I'm still learning as I move along in my coaching. So that's something for me has been an aha moment, and that I still am on the journey of reaching more and more.
And still kind of figuring it out as you go.
Yeah, because when I hear a client tell me something, and then it's kind of like I go back to the exam room in my head, and that identity as a physician who's supposed to know it says, "Oh, okay, you said this, this, and this, and this. So from what I understand, it's probably this and this. And between those two things, I think that's what it is. So let's go with that."
And how would you say that you've started to navigate that? Is it trying to hold the two things separately, or is it trying to take a step back and, oh, okay, maybe I need to ask more questions? Or how do you kind of find yourself in that mold? Because I certainly can understand that as a coach. I see sometimes with the people I work with, I'm like, oh, I kind of want to just tell you what to do. I know maybe like I have an opinion on what you should do, but I shouldn't just dive in there and say that, XYZ is the answer. I should try to lead people to get there. So I'm just curious if
Yeah.
that's been. your experience or how you've like kind of navigated that.
One thing I think that is somewhat of a paradox in being a physician and practicing as a physician is that as you get older and as you get more experienced, you see more things, you know more things, and perhaps you know more answers than you did earlier in your career. But the paradox is that as a pediatrician, you realize more and more how little you know, how much there are gray areas, especially in counseling parents and in talking to teenagers and such. And so there's a humbling process to that where you start to say, wow, you asked me that question 10 years ago, I would have said, try this, 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 and this. And now it's kind of like, well, what's worked for you so far? And that's a difference. That's a switch. So that has helped me, I believe, as a coach in making that shift to switching it back to the client and saying, in your wisdom and experience in the past, what have you learned about yourself that will help you approach this problem? This issue, whatever it is, the goal that you're trying to reach. And I think that remembering that for me and being able to take a deep breath, take a step back and say, this is what I think is going on, or this is a direction I would take, but this is not me on the other side of this screen, the other side of the room.
Yes.
And I have to remind myself of that. And I even say that verbally to the client. I will say, you know, there's a part of me that wants to just tell you what I
Yeah.
think, this, and this, but I know that you are not me and you have a different path. So I'm more curious about what you think.
No, no, it totally makes sense. Joe, so thinking about your primary offer, like tell us a little bit more about that because I have a question that I want to ask for that. And for anyone listening too, like that would happen to find themselves in that situation. Like let's talk about what your primary offer is and who it's for.
One thing that I discovered about being a coach is when I was in my individual coach training, I was glad that we had a pretty good chunk of the curriculum about
Yeah.
creating programs and offers and things like that. We were told a little bit about pricing, but that's the magic mystery thing that I think I would love more transparency and sharing of ideas about
Yeah.
that. But it's also somewhat nebulous. And I think it's different for every coach and what your goal is, what your hope is. But for me right now, my primary offer for physicians is a program that involves a period of time that I work with them. And it used to be, I would say 6 months is the comprehensive period program that I have. And within that 6 months, there are certain um, assessment tools that I use in the beginning up front, and we have an intake and then we have probably about 12 sessions that are usually for me. I have the rare opportunity to have someone local here where I live in Seattle that I can meet with in person, but
Okay.
most of
That's
the
nice.
time it's so great to have a physical body in the room with you.
Yes. That's
But
different. Yeah.
it
We
is,
don't get that anymore. Yeah.
most of the time it is, via Zoom or whatever platform people use. For me, I use Zoom. And so I would meet with them on about an every other week basis. But, they say physicians are busy, but other people are busy too. I don't know why we say that physicians are busy, but if I say that to a physician, I know you're busy and I know that it's difficult to schedule time, then that makes them feel better that I see them, I recognize them. And so it's usually about every other week that we meet face to face via Zoom or something or in person. And then in between, we touch base either through phone calls, through text, through emails. Sometimes, if I have a client that is searching for a new position, if we get to that point, then they may send me, hey, here's an email I think I want to send out, or here's my CV that I want to, if you're willing to look at, or things like that. And I always tell them, I'm not in the business of advice giving. I cannot tell you these particulars. I'm not an expert on resumes and CVs.
Yeah.
I can tell you a little bit about how you're coming across, knowing you, and whether I think that that's the authentic you coming across. Short of that, not so much. But so that's the offer that I use. It's more of a comprehensive. And now it's kind of, I say 6 to 8 months or 9 months, because what happens is as we get toward the end, depending on where the client is, we may want to stretch those meetings
Hmm.
out a little bit more. And to me, it's what's in service of the client. And if they have kind of purchased my attention for
Yeah.
a period of time, and for me, that's much better than saying, this is how much I charge per session, per hour, per whatever.
Yeah.
And also, I have considered this idea of having additional sources such as evergreen online resources and things. But for me, each client is so unique and each is different. So I provide those tools or resources as I go along in the program as I see fit, whether that's personality profiles or communication tools or different things like that. So that's my comprehensive program. I also, with some clients, depending on how focused their issue is, we may shorten that. We may have that
Yeah.
cut in half and say, well, let's go with this. And if a client like kind of balks and says, whoa, that's too much of a commitment for me. And I'm always thinking it's the money, it's the money, it's the money, but it's not always the money.
No, not
Many
always. I've learned that.
times
It took me a while to learn that in what I do too, but it's not always the block. Like, yeah, it's other
It's always the
reasons.
commitment, it's the
Yeah.
time, it's this kind of like taking the leap that I might have to change something in me, and
Yeah.
so that's what I would say that those are and then if somebody says, "Wow, I don't really know, I just met you or whatever, I really like you, I think we have chemistry," I'll say, "All right, why don't we get started for 2 or 3 months, and then we can see where we are at that time. I don't want to push you or force you
Yeah.
into something that you're not sure about. At the same time, if I believe that I can be helpful to you and you believe the same thing, then let's get started and see."
And does the range of your clientele, is it certain people starting out in what they're doing, or is it later on, or what, or does it run the gamut, or where do people normally
Yeah.
find themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question because this whole idea of finding your niche and how narrow to make that niche or how
Such a
broad.
hard question. Like, don't feel like you have to answer it on this podcast because
I don't,
everyone listening to this is dealing with the same question. Everyone, me too.
yeah.
Like it's always, yeah.
So I think for me, there's a part of me that would love to say, I don't want to restrict it to just healthcare people. I'm interested in people that are broader scoped and have ideas that they want to expand. And the reality is, the field I know is medicine, and I know the issues that physicians encounter and where they find themselves stuck.
Yeah.
And therefore, I'm more valuable to them, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. And there may be other coaches that have different expertise that I think maybe other people are better served by them. So for me, started out as kind of being the burnout coach, like physicians who are burnt out and
Okay.
thinking they want to quit. But then I started to do a little bit more of leadership and executive coaching. And then I started to think, oh, how do I appeal to this executive coaching group and then leadership coaching versus people who are burned out versus physicians who get in trouble and are kind of sent to coaching. How do I deal with that? Is that something I want to do?
Do you want to do that? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But what I realize as I go along is so the reality is I do the gambit. I do everything from frontline community health worker, community health center, nurse practitioner, PA, somebody like that,
Hmm.
all the way up to the chief medical officer of a health system. So I can run the gambit of all of that because the reality is, from my perspective, everything starts with self awareness. Everything starts with the willingness to look at yourself in the mirror and say, where am I? How did I get here? Who am I? And now what do I want to do about it?
Yeah, that's great. And how would you say you figured out what you wanted the offer to be? And of course, like it's still molding. You're still probably honestly everyone's figuring it out. But just curious, like how did you get to the point where you say, "Oh, actually, this is something I really am interested in. This is something I want to do." And I ask that because I think, yeah, a lot of people listening really are still trying to, yeah, they have a primary offer, but it's still trying to how can I change that? And it's really it's comes from a good place, right? Because it's like, how can I change that for the good of my clients? How can I make this even better? So that's why I kind of asked that question.
That's a great question. I would say I asked a lot of people, "What do you do? How do you do it? What's
Yeah.
going on?" And, I mean and also networking with other coaches, I found that that's been very helpful. We have a very active chapter of, the International Coaching Federation here in the state of Washington, and you can be a member. You don't need to be certified in anything, or so you can be a member and participate in activities, and you have meetings where you just meet each other. You exchange
Mhm.
ideas and these types of things, and you say, "Wow, how does that fit? How is that working?" But I would say the original idea of how to start thinking about a program came from my coaching training,
Mm, mhm.
and it was a physician coach who had been doing it for over 25 years, and through trial and error and everything else, she said this is what works for her, and she encouraged us to try to think about things as you are bringing your knowledge, your expertise, your experience, as well as your personality to the client. And if all of those things meld to be of benefit to the client, then that's something that's going to be valuable to that client and they're willing to pay for it. So that's,
Yeah.
I think, where it started. And then, and then if I happen a certain period of time to say, oh gosh, nobody wants to pay for my services, there's nobody out there, I don't know what, then all of a sudden I think, oh gosh, I'm charging too much. That's the easiest thing to think of. Or,
That's where most
I'm
coaches go, 100%. Yep. You're right.
exactly,
You're right.
exactly. Or but it may have absolutely nothing to do with me. It may have nothing to do with the amount of marketing I'm doing, it may have nothing to do with anything like that. And it may have to do with the economy. It may have to do with the psychology of what's happening in the minds of, for me, doctors at the time.
Mhm.
So what I've learned to do is to take a beat, take a breath, kind of if I have some space in my week and time, take advantage of that. And that's been a huge lesson for me is to be patient, take a breath. If you have some space, don't spend it worrying and spinning, but spend it doing something that is good for you or something that you feel is helpful to work on your business, whatever.
No, I 100% agree with that. And in my 10 years of being in this online business world, that rings so true because there are times where it's feast and famine. Oh, everyone's saying yes, everyone's agreeing to the discovery calls, everything's going great. And the other times where it's harder for whatever reason, certain years that are harder. And for me, I learned during those times is to keep building and to yeah, take a step back because it's like, well, I can take a breath of fresh air during these times. I can't push, I can't force people to come and sign a contract with me. It just can't happen. It has to be like an overtime thing. So yeah, 100% on what you're saying there. Resonate with that.
Yes, it's something that I still right now, I was just telling my wife yesterday, I said, I'm seeing my calendar, there are a lot more gaps in the week. And
Yeah.
so, and she says, oh yeah, what about get that car needs to get fixed? What about
Yeah,
the room that needs to
exactly.
get
What
painted?
can fill there? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can fill your time, no problem.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny. Um, Joe, when you're thinking of your clients, what separates the clients that get the most out of working with you from the ones who maybe don't, or maybe not that they're going to be unsuccessful, but the ones that you go and you're like, ah, did I help them? Was my knowledge helpful? Okay. Compared to the ones who are like, wow, you look forward to the calls, they're always praising you afterward. I know we've all had a mix of those. So what separates those groups?
Yeah. And in my experience, there are two ends of the spectrum. The far end of the spectrum that is the nightmare for
Hmm.
me, and this may be unique to me, is the client that is sent to me because they are in trouble for one
Yeah.
reason or another, and they are sponsored by their employer or organization, and they're sent to me to get fixed for some reason,
Fix them.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And that I have to say in the beginning, I was scared to death of these clients. But then I started to realize that as I meet them, because I don't say no right away, I will say, what has this person been told? What have you discussed with them? What have you told them about me? Or where are we in this whole scheme of things? What is the reality? Are you just sending this person to me as the final step and going out the door and it's
Are
a
you
done
like the
deal?
precursor to the final conversation? Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Like,
Because
you
if
don't wanna
all
be
of
in
that's
that
true,
situation.
I don't want it. I don't want
Yeah.
it. Just go ahead and do what you want to do or find someone else to do that. But I would say that in general, I would find that we as physicians, we're rule followers. We've always been kind of the goody goody teacher's pet in order to try to get to the next level in the academic ladder or whatever. So if we're in trouble and we got called to the principal's office, we do not like that. That's
No.
not where we
Nope,
like to
nope.
be. We might have been pushed to that point for some reason because things around us have changed so much that we don't know how to cope with it. We don't have the tools to deal with it. So if a client comes to me in that situation and says, and I talk to them and say, just tell me what happened. Tell me your story. And I'm on your side. I'm your advocate. I want what's best for you. And I'm working primarily for you. So realize that as best you can. And I know it's hard to build trust in that. At the same time, I want this to be a place where you can feel comfortable going in any direction you want. And usually in those situations, just the fact that they got called into the principal's office to begin with changes their behavior right away, whatever got them in trouble.
Yeah.
But then we can go deeper and go in. The other end of the spectrum is the client that comes and says, I want to go deep. I want to understand myself better. I really want to know what the underlying issues are. And I don't know how I got here. I'm feeling like I'm lost or I'm trapped, but I really want to work with trying to change and understand myself and kind of move forward in a direction that's more consistent with who I am authentically. If I hear that, it's like, wait a second, those are my words coming back to me. Here, what do I do to work with you? I just want to work with you. So those are like the ends of the spectrum. And I say anywhere in between, the closer a client is to being willing to be reflective and and search for self-awareness, the better off I am working with that client.
Yeah, I love that. Say that can you say the last part again? Because I think
Sure,
people need to hear that. That is
sure.
so good.
Yeah. The closer a client is willing to look at themselves, be reflective about their lives, and be willing to increase in self-awareness in order to be able to change their behavior or path in life, the more I'm attracted to working with that client.
I love it. So good. It doesn't have to be those clients specifically, but let's talk about breakthrough moments for a client. Like, have you seen a breakthrough moment occur, and what does that look like in your field for the people that you work with?
Sure, I'll give you some examples.
Sure.
I worked with and I work with. This isn't just one client, so I'm not kind of revealing confidentiality of even won't even use names, places, or whatever. But a client who is in academic medicine, and academic medicine has this combination of physician culture, which is extremely perfectionistic, driven, do it on your own, suck it up and deal, and academic culture, which is strive to get to the next level. You have to keep pushing. You got to be in there. You could compare yourself to your colleagues all the time. So, client that comes to me feeling successful, but also has a family and kids at home and wants a real life and doesn't want to just sign their lives over to medicine and academic medicine and publish or perish or trying to guess what the department chair, division chief, or whatever wants of me, but is willing to kind of say, okay, I see what's going on around me and I don't see myself in these other people I'm around. So then it becomes, all right, are you willing to kind of take a step back and say, how did you get here in the first place? What drew you in? Is it
Hmm.
still true? Was it ever true? And then kind of be willing to go to that level. And I have had clients that are in that situation. They're willing to go deeper. They're willing to consider and open up to possibility.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean that it's going to be okay, quit your job tomorrow. It may be you may decide to take a different approach to your job. You may be able to, with a lot of self compassion and a lot of buildup for yourself, a lot of affirmation, to be able to say, I can see these other people around me. I'm not like them. And so I'm going to take a different path. That takes a lot of courage, a lot of courage. And so for me, I want to be a cheerleader for that client, and I have been. And I also want that client to make that choice on their own without judgment And so I've had a few clients who have been able to realize that, look at the situation and not necessarily leave,
Mhm.
but to then advocate for themselves and say, I've discovered this about myself. I've discovered that I am much more effective and feel more myself if I have more of this and less of this. And that's what I want. How can you make that happen? Let's talk about that. But to get to that point, to advocate for yourself when you've been in a system and in a culture which puts you down and says, you don't deserve to do that, just do what you're told, that's a big leap. And so that's what I work with those clients. And there have been some amazing breakthroughs. And I've had clients in the same situations from the surface, it looks the same. And one leaves the institution and says, this is not for me. I'm going somewhere else, and the other advocates for more and more and more until they get to where they feel they're most comfortable.
And that's amazing because it's such a common thread that I've seen on a lot of these calls that I've had with other coaches is that it's this like idea. I always think of like the idea of the either or. They come in, okay, either I have to stay and I'm going to be miserable or I have to leave. But I feel like that's such like, to me, that's the true power of coaching is that you can kind of guide them to the point of, okay, but maybe it doesn't have to be your either or options. Maybe you can stay, but maybe it looks different. And like, I just feel it's like, can be eye-opening to people, but also like the pressure off their shoulders, right? Oh, it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be what I was envisioning either way. Like maybe I could have thought of that myself, but then you have like a magical coach that asked that question, and then yeah, and I think it's definitely it's something a lot of other coaches have talked about in that opening people up to the possibility. I mean, they're open to it, I think, when they come in to work with us, but then that you start to have those conversations, and it's oh, I didn't realize that was eye opening. It was just a question, but yeah, it's interesting.
Well, Jordan, you bring up a good point because I think a lot of coaching, I believe, is someone else asking the questions that you should be asking yourself.
Yeah.
And it's hard to ask those questions of yourself because it may mean change. It may involve change. It may involve making decisions that are hard decisions that you've been afraid of. And I think one thing for me personally that has helped me in that is that I've made so many changes in my life, in my career. I think I was counting up actually just last night or something. So, like, I want to be in this podcast. Let me think, how many different jobs have I had as a physician, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's been like 16 or 18 different jobs
Wow, yeah,
that I have had. And because I've moved, I've been in and out of the country, I've gone, and I think and I'm not advocating that every physician should do that,
yeah.
but I do think that the idea of making a change and having the courage to make that change then it enables you to make another change if that's what's called upon to do.
No, that makes total sense because it starts to get like you get the ball rolling almost, and then you realize the
Mhm.
possibility, and you're, oh, I could do any of these different things, and yeah, you just, yeah, it makes total sense. So, Joe, what areas have you been coached yourself? And then a second part of that question, what did being on the other side of that teach you about coaching in general? And then with that, like, how did you kind of work that into your own practice, or were you able to? Was it something that was helpful?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was at a point in my life about 15 years ago or so where my family we were living in Bolivia and we were there with an organization and for 4 years, my wife, myself, my 2 young kids, and we moved back after 4 years to Seattle, and I landed and had a tremendous difficulty with reentry into our country and our culture. And I searched around. I worked a couple of different temporary jobs and finally landed a job that was in a leadership position in a clinic and rapidly took on responsibility. And there were issues with the system that were broken and that really needed fixing. As a physician, we are taught to do it alone. You can do it, get in there. And so that's what I thought. If
Yeah,
I can work harder, I'll make up for all of the deficiencies of the system that I'm working in. And I worked myself to terrible anxiety, depression, just to the point of where I had to quit. During that time, I mean, I'm a big kind of seek help person. So I had a therapist, a spiritual advisor, I went for a coach and retreats, all kinds of things. And for me, the coaching in that moment was bringing something different that I was getting than from a therapist or from a spiritual advisor. It was bringing certain tools and certain ways of looking at my life and certain modalities that were not present in the therapy
Mhm.
or in the spiritual accompaniment I was receiving, or even just talking to a friend because friends and relatives, they want you to feel better. They want you to think, yeah, whatever you decided is the right thing. Hang
Yeah,
in
you're the
there. And
best. Yeah.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
great. Like,
Yeah.
and that's great, man. We all need that.
We need
Bring it
that
on.
support. Yeah.
Bring it on.
Yeah.
At the same time, what the coach was able to do for me was to say, ask me these questions. And really, if I said, well, this is the way it is, and say, really, is it? Does it really have to be that way? Well, this is what's expected of me, or this is what my wife thinks, or what my family wants. This is what my role in life. Really? Is that the way it is? And not only that, but like I say, use specific models and modalities and every coach, I believe, has kind of like a toolkit of different things that they bring forth. So for me, what that coaching at a time in my life where I was really lost and I needed some type of foundation that came from within me that I could hold on to and move forward. That's what that coach gave me. That's what that coach was able to provide for me. And it didn't come like, here is this recipe for your future. It came from within. And that's a journey that's a lifelong journey for me and something that I try to work with my clients. Let's try to incorporate all of these external influences that you've had. Look at yourself as far as what you have learned about yourself within that process and try to build on that and try to cultivate that and marinate that and learn more about yourself.
No, that's amazing. I love that. We kind of were talking about we were hinting at this, talking about this a little bit, but curious what has been your most successful strategy for growing this coaching business and for getting yourself out there? You talked a little bit about networking, marketing, and what has worked for you? Because any coach listening to this is working on their own business and trying to get themselves out there. So I was asked this question.
And okay, giving advice, I have to be careful. I would say
Yeah, which is
for
what has
me,
worked best for
I
you.
know,
Yeah.
I'd say for me, I would say, first of all, I'm older. I'm not a big social media person. I can't figure out a lot about it. So one one piece of advice that the program that I went through when we talked about marketing was choose your path of marketing. There's a list of like 20 different ways that you could market yourself.
Oh yeah.
Look at this list of 20 different things, and now there's probably 20 more or more, and pick two main ways that you really want to spend your time doing and start there. And don't try to spread yourself too thin where you think, oh gosh, I have to have a presence on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and then I have to call people and then I have to write newsletters and do this and be. So pick two ways that fit your personality and in ways that you feel like, oh yeah, I really do well speaking directly to people. So use modalities that work that way. Or I'm a great writer, or I love being on Facebook or social media.
Yeah.
And so use those things that you feel comfortable with and use those tools primarily to do your marketing. So that's one piece of advice that I think really helped me and it helped me kind of alleviate this anxiety about not being a social media guru. The other thing is patience. Have
Yeah.
patience because the primary way that I receive clients now is through referrals from prior clients. And I would say for me, if I'm spending time cultivating that community of alums, that community of people who really felt impacted by working with me as a coach, they are, they're proselytizing. They're going out into the world and saying, I hear you're having an issue and here's somebody that would be great to work with. He really helped me. I think he could help you. So I would say, as far as being able to get clients actually sign up and engaged in programs, it's through prior clients referring them. And it may be indirect. It may be sometimes it's, I'll say, "Well, how did you hear about me?" "I'm not really sure. Let me
Yeah,
think."
yeah. I don't
Yeah, it's like this.
remember.
It's
How
like
did I get to
my
yeah.
wife, I think, talked to her friend who heard you on a podcast that you were talking about, something like this. So sometimes it's like that, but I would say there's a handful of clients that I've worked with that will say, "Oh, I was talking to so and so, and I told them to come talk to you. So just in case you hear from them." And so I think cultivating that group, whatever it might be, getting them together, and also checking in on them after you're finished working with them. Check in on them
Yeah.
periodically, and whether it's through a newsletter, but anything you can do to personally reach out to them. Hey, how's it going with that new job? So something that's personal is important.
Oh, I think those are 2 great ones because it really is dialing in on what works for you and what you are comfortable doing. Yeah, but also it can be a little uncomfortable too, but it's what you're gonna actually do. I tell people that in book marketing too. I'm like, there are a million different things you could do. Pick 5, I say 5 because there's a million, but, like, pick the ones that you're gonna feel good with and you're gonna actually do. It's the same thing for a coaching business too. I don't have that many ways that I market myself other than the few that I do. Focus on LinkedIn. I try to have one-on-one conversations on this podcast, that I'm doing to write my own book, and I do the things that I like and enjoy. I like having these conversations. I don't necessarily like, you know, talking to a room full of 200 people, but I like the more one-on-one. So you try to figure out what you feel most comfortable. If you are a super extrovert and want to just like go to all the networking events, then make that your thing. It doesn't matter necessarily what it is, as long as you like it, and then eventually you want it to work for you. That's important too. Getting some actual data from your activities. So,
I think you bring up a great point here, Jordan, that just thought about is
mhm.
sometimes people think, well, I wouldn't be a good coach because I'm not outgoing. I'm not that big. But, I'm amazed. I think the primary reason people choose to work with someone
Hmm.
has very little to do with what's on your credentials or what
Yeah,
labels or badges you have. It's how did I feel when I was with you? How did I feel? Did I feel like, you were like, you know, yelling at me and preaching to me or whatever, and I don't do well with that?
yeah,
Or did I
yeah.
feel like you were this calm presence that was perhaps a little introverted, but really focused in on me as an individual? And boy, I felt so much more at home with you. So it takes all types, and some people click, some people don't. That's why we need more coaches, a variety of coaches out there that people can see themselves and say, this is a container that I can really let my hair down and feel myself.
Yeah, and it's just so important to and again, it goes back to what you were saying, do what works for you and what makes you feel good about doing for your own marketing, whatever it is, because then if you're doing what makes you feel good, then you're gonna be someone that is comfortable. They're gonna be comfortable around you, whatever it is you're doing. It's even if you're writing LinkedIn posts or whatever it is, you could be writing something, and if that's not your thing, then you're gonna be turning people off because people are like, "I don't get what this is. Like, why is Jordan trying to write these posts? That doesn't work. I'm not connecting with that." But like, if it is something that comes from the heart, people are going to connect with that. Not everyone, but hopefully your people. So yeah, I love that. We're getting close to the end of the conversation, but Joe, I always want to give people the chance to get up on their soapbox to talk about something that is like near and dear to you, because yeah, I want to make people that come on this show feel like they're heard, that that you can share. So if you have anything be related to whatever, but if it's related to coaching and if it's just in coaching specifically, great, but it doesn't have to be. So if there's something, I'd be happy to have you share it.
Sure. Um, I would say something that I'm increasingly aware of is um, how much we take on ourselves that have been given to us by other people.
Mm,
We've been told all our lives that we should be this way, we should do that. We would be great at this, we would be great at that. And so what happens, and what has happened to me and what happens with a lot of my physician clients, is that we have taken on the expectations, the aspirations of other people. And so that search for what's truly inside of me in a way that is filled with self-compassion. To me, self-compassion is this tool that I learned during the pandemic time when I felt so isolated, that as you go into this journey of trying to discover what's truly authentic to you, that you do it with this idea of compassion because you'll run into things that you go like, "Oh my god, how could I have felt so stupid, or how could I have done that
Yeah.
when everyone was telling me to take this path and I took it and I knew it wasn't the right thing to do and I still did it." I mean, to me, sit back, put your hand over your heart, give yourself some compassion, learn from your experiences, and now take the direction that you feel is authentic for you.
Amazing. Well said. I love it. That's a great soapbox. Stand on that one all day for sure. I love that one. All right, Joe. So thank you so much for your time today. Really, really super appreciate it. Where can people find more information or more information about you? Where is best for them to connect with you?
Sure. I have a website. It's joeshermanmd.com. Very easy to find. And you can also on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. That's the social media platform I chose. And
Yep, with you on
also,
that one. Yep.
yeah. And then also just direct email joe@joeshermanmd.com. I am a solo person. I am the one that will respond to you. I'm the one that hears this. And I offer free consultations. Anyone that's interested in learning more about coaching with me, you can sign up on my website directly for an appointment to meet with me.
All right. Amazing. Thank you for that. And thank you again for your time. Super appreciate it, Joe.
Great, Jordan. Thanks so much for inviting me.
For sure.
Are you still here listening to this podcast? You're awesome. I got two CTAs for you. Number one, subscribe to this podcast for more. And number two, have you ever thought about writing a book? Contact Jordan. He can help you out. Jordan at jamring.com.